All right, Hawk, let me talk about this whole concept first of the family tree, and Boise State's had it both ways. You have a personal experience, but we'll get to those two situations in terms of Boise State's hiring since Lyle, and then your situation in your background. But in general, you've known the coaching profession for 40 years or whatever. What are your thoughts on this general idea of coaching tree hires versus best man for the job?
Well, culture eats strategy for lunch every day. And um, when you have a successful tree, um, it has a lot to do with culture and it has a lot to do with, every phase of your program. It's interesting, Jeff. If you really look at the Boise State tree, or at least let's say the modern tree of Dirk, Hawk, Pete, Harse, really goes back to Vic Rowan. You know who Vic Rowan is?
Vic Rohn. No, and I need you to get closer to your mic, Hawk, because it's breaking up a little bit.
Okay. So Vic Rowan is a Hall of Fame coach from San Francisco State.
Okay.
Vic Rowan is where Jim Soker played, who is the Hall of Fame coach from Davis. Vic Rowan is where Dirk Cutter coached and Andy Reid coached. Okay. So out of this tree comes Jim Soker, comes to UC Davis, wins a bunch of championships, Hall of Fame coach. From UC Davis comes Dan Hawkins, Chris Peterson, also Mike Bellotti, Nick Aliotti, Neil Zambukis, Bob Foster.
Wow.
And that tree goes to Oregon. Well, guess who goes to Oregon? Aliotti, Bellotti,
right.
Zambukis, Foster, Justin Wilcox, Bob Gregory, Chris Peterson, and Dirk Cutter. So then miraculously, guess who ends up at Boise State? So this cultural thing has been important. And then you have pretty stable leadership. Obviously, Bob Custer being there the entire time. And you have Gene Blameyer, who begets Kurt Apsey, who Kurt was there with Gene. Mm-hmm. And let's not forget the element of Jeff Pittman, who foundation for blue collar. We kind of really embellished that when we were there. My dad was a logger. Jeff Pittman's comes from a dairy. We're grinders. We're people of the dirt. We're workers. And so Jeff Pittman builds on the back of Big House, who builds Boise State football through running upper decks. And then it's very interesting that you look. So you got Brad Bedell. Where did Brad Bedell come? University of Colorado. Dan Hawkins. Kent Riddle. Dan Hawkins, Chris Peterson, Ryan Harsin, Lee Marks, Gabe Franklin, who goes back to Dirk Cutter and Dan Hawkins, Jaleel Brown, Colorado, Eric Keesaw, Colorado. So this whole cycle, and then, like I said, Justin Wilcox, who he was a GA for me at Boise, then he goes to Cal, then he comes back. Andy Avalos, Dirk Cutter, Dan Hawkins, as a coach at Boise and at Colorado.
Right.
Okay. So he's kind of back in the mix. But this continuity, Jeff, of the science of football, and there is a science to it, how you put it together, how you game plan, the details of that, how you schedule your week, how you handle situational football. Those things matter and they're important. But then also how you treat kids, how you treat your staff, how you treat the community, how you put it in perspective. And even though all of us, Dirk, me, Pete, and Harse are different kinds of personalities, when you peel the banana and get down in the middle of it, it's really all the same. So then you have all these all these high school coaches and these JC coaches, everybody that's known everybody for years
Hmm.
and what we are and who we're about, they don't doubt for a second like how their kids are going to get treated, how they're going to get coached, what's the nature of the program. And so there's a confidence there. There becomes a pipeline there. I can't tell you how many guys when I was at Boise would call me up and just say, "Hey, we got a guy for you." Like they know what kind of guy we're after, what kind of player we're after, what kind of person we're after. Um, and it's big. So when you have this kind of success, it goes back and think about it. Think about going all the way back to Vic Rowan and the Golden Gators of San Francisco State through Oregon to Boise. And all of us, like I said, at our core, even though like our personalities to some degree are a little bit different, who we are as football people, very much the same, very much.
So, Hawk, taking a look then at some of this, your own personal experience. Unless I'm mistaken, I didn't know of any connection at Willamette for you. Of course, there was a connection at Boise. Of course, there was a connection at Davis. And I don't recall if there was any connection at Colorado for you. So you've had it. Your most success, I would argue, was at Davis and at Boise, although you had some good days and years at Colorado. But up to
Well, hey, at Willamette, Jeff, now let's not forget, and I'm not trying to, we went to the national championship
I was getting there. There was some
and we won 3 championships. And there was a school named PLU that used to win a lot that we beat them more times than they beat us. And there's a school called Linfield
right.
that we beat them more times. So, like I always said, not my first rodeo. I went to Christian Brothers High School. We went to the section championship. So, no, I've been in a lot of different rodeos. I've been in a lot of different arenas.
So as you look at all of those, is there a path that you had that you thought was more successful, not only for you, but for the program? Because what you leave behind to me is as important as what you create. And you left behind a team that won the most famous game maybe in the history of college football, right? And the coaches you helped. But so this family tree, I think, keeps growing because guys take care of it along the way.
Well, it's also too, Jeff, and we have the same thing going on at Davis right now. We have a tremendous amount of ownership. We have a tremendous amount of self-efficacy. We have a tremendous amount of mastery orientation. I look at the amount of coaches that have been with me. In fact, I was talking to some of our younger guys about this. I always say the good news about me is I give you a lot of rope. The bad news is I give you a lot of rope. I think there's a reason why. I mean, look at Jeff Grimes, who was at BYU. He kind of came through both the Dirk Cutter and the Dan Hawkins tree. But you develop leaders and you develop thinkers and you develop mastery oriented people. Now that comes down to quarterbacks making protection calls and audibles, to assistant coaches making decisions about recruiting, about staying out of the coordinator's hair at times I'll tell you, I was a coordinator once, Jeff, and I hated it when the head coach came down and got in my ear. I absolutely hated it.
Mm-hmm.
And I always swore when I was a head coach, I'm not going to do that. I mean, if you got a good guy, like help him, mentor him, feed him, but get out of his way. So you develop this system where there becomes ownership in the program with the players. Mostly it all starts with them because it's in the locker room, the weight room, and downtown and across campus. And really at practice, how we train, what our expectation is. I'll go back. I remember when we were I forget which bowl game we were getting ready to at Boise, but if you remember, Virginia came and they were playing Fresno, I think, in the
Oh yeah, in the well, I
in
don't
the H Bowl.
know the H.
So I remember this clearly. We're standing on the sidelines with some of our players and we're watching Virginia practice. So they would complete a ball and their whole team would be going like, yeah, yeah. And our guys were going like, what are they cheering for? And because they made the catch. And like our guys are going, we're supposed to do that. Like we had this perfect practice Thursday. Like we just, every play had to be perfect, or we wanted it to be perfect, pretty close to being perfect. Like you expect to catch, you expect to complete the pass.
Sure.
But I thought it was, again, one of those interesting cultural moments where here they are polishing up for their bowl game and they're ecstatic that they completing these passes. And our guys are going, well, that's what you're supposed to do. So, and again, the modern Boise tree started with dirt. And, if you think about that, the reason I got on that train was because I wasn't very far from Eugene when I was in Salem. And I'd drive down to Eugene quite often and meet with Dirk and Pete, and we would talk ball. And so that's kind of how that got going. And a lot of that was Pete
All right.
talking to Dirk of saying, hey, you need a guy that's got head coaching experience.
Let me pivot here for a second, and I want to go to two other things. I want to talk about, of course, your former player and guy who coached for you, Andy. You're competing against Choate. I'll get to that in a second. But what about budgets, Hawk? A lot of discussion about, Utah State's just made a big move in the Mountain West Conference with 2.5 million for assistants. Boise's been at 3.25 million, 2.325 million. The budget in some respects hasn't changed since Pete left in 2013. And, Brian Harsin was pretty loud about that after he won the Mountain West Championship in 2019, that this has to change. We need to get better, not just tread water. So when you took over as the head coach from Dirk, you gave back some of your head coach's money to put it in the salary pool. So how concerned are coaches, or should they be, even ADs for that matter, on operating budgets, and how difficult is it to see those things rise or fall?
It's big, Jeff. I always say people over things. Like first of all, every great program, people talk about Boise State. Well, the number one reason we're good is because of players. You have to get players. And there's things that go into that, recruiting budgets and facilities and they're the city and the support and all those things, fuel that. You have to get coaches and you have to be able to pay those coaches. It's interesting. One of the things, and you remember this, okay? You probably remember it. My first year there, when you and everybody else wanted to run me out after we went 0-2 to South Carolina and Washington State. When we beat Fresno on ESPN on Thursday night, and they were ranked number 8, the next BAA meeting, when they brought the band in and everybody was fired up, and I was fired up too, but I said, okay, I'm striking right here. And I don't know that Gene was all that fired up about it, to be honest with you. But I said, okay, did you guys like that? Yeah. You want more of that? Yeah. I said, well, hey, guess what? In the big WAC, or not, excuse me, in the WAC at that time, I go, in the WAC, our strength coach is 8 out of 10. Our weight room is 10 out of 10. And everybody's kind of staring at me like, oh my gosh. Well, I'm going, guys, you can't have a number 1 team if everything is down ranked number 8, 9, or 10, or wherever it is. You can't do that. That's not an adequate formula. So one of the things that I did was, once I got it going and I had enough juice to get it in there, was in the state board, you could not give somebody a raise over 20% unless it went to the state board. So Gene worked out a deal for our assistants that if we won 8 games, that our assistants would get a 19% raise. So, we were able to help our people. The other thing is, I sat down with Gene too, and I said, look, you remember back in the day, Dale Holstein, we had one guy, sometimes his daughter would come out and help. Okay. And he had maybe 1 or 2 other guys.
His sons, probably.
Well, so I said, we got to build that. I mean, we went on the road, and Gary Craner was like he would be handing out per diem money and doing the hotel keys, and he's the trainer.
Right.
So I said, no, we've got to build our video department, our athletic training, our equipment people, as well as our staff and our infrastructure. And that's really, we have to do that to get ourselves where we're going. So we started this progression, and part of it was, I say legally, but it was in my contract, and that's what I kind of lobbied for. And, there was a time there when Pete was at Boise. I think Bob Gregory left a coordinator job at Cal and came to Boise, and he was making over $300,000 as a linebacker coach.
Yeah, I do remember that.
So, but the crux of it, Jeff, you got to have people, and you got to have good people, and you got to be able to attract people and keep good people. Now, hey, you're not going to keep somebody from going to the SEC because they have money all over the place. But you certainly, in that next tier down, you don't want somebody leaving your program because they're going to get paid a tremendous amount more than they would at your place. And you want to be able to attract people and keep good people.
So let me ask you this then, Hawk, because I want to add to the solutions. Going back to what Blameyer did was when Pete was here and they had it really going, and you'd already left to Colorado, our salaries that we were paying assistants at Boise were competitive with the mid-tier of the Pac-12. Now, this was before all that CFP money hit and changed where the P5 was getting their dough and how much. But I'm wondering, we weren't selling that many more season tickets, maybe. I don't think the tickets cost as much as they did on the membership side or the ticket side. So how'd Gene do that? Where'd he
well,
money from?
I know this, as you well know, and everybody has their opinions about Dan Hawkins and Boise, and that's great. But I know, if you remember this, I was going around going, "Hey, we can be a top 15 program. We can be a top 15 program." I was banging the table on that. But I went around and spoke to a lot of groups. I remember I spent a whole day, if not 2 days, talking to all the Albertsons folks out at the fairgrounds and raising money that way, and getting Optimist involved, and getting Chamber of Commerce involved, and schools. And so I spent a lot of emotional capital going, "Hey, look, we need to be your team, and you need to help us, and you need to support us." And then, we got down towards the end there, and when Larry Williams and the guys got together and built the indoor and put that together. So it was a lot of fingerlings going along. And you remember the old Gene had the whole goal line club where we had all the people donated, and their names are on the side of the stadium for every yard mark. But hey, in some cases it was $100. And then when we built the indoor facility, I mean, it was more in the $5 and $10 million range. And I went, God rest his soul. I remember going and meeting with J.R. Simplot over in the Arid Club and going upstairs with those guys. And really, I mean, because I believed in what we were doing. I believed strongly in the culture of Boise State football and what it was about and what it meant. And I remember going across campus and having them being so fired up because they were attracting faculty from across the country that never heard of Boise. Chamber of Commerce going, "We're bringing corporations in here that had never heard of Boise before, but now they all know about it." I mean, I remember going into a coffee shop, and this couple had just moved, and I said, "Why did you move here?" And they go, "Oh, they didn't know who I was. It just seems like a great place." I go, "Why does it seem like a great place?" "Oh, it's so magical. I mean, Boise State football, and it just seems magical." Like, these people, it's like Oz. Like they moved from Kansas to Boise because for some reason, it's like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. When he can't figure it out. He just got to go to Devil's Tower. He can't figure it out. He's got to go there.
I want to pivot. I know you got a lot happening there at Davis. A game coming up against Coach Choate is your first opener there at UC Davis, with the Big Sky taking hopefully the field in February. But your thoughts on a guy you've competed with, I know through the coaching angles, and then a guy that you coached and you at Colorado, and Andy. So tell me about Choate and Andy, just what you know about them, what kind of guys they are.
I first met Jeff, I believe he's at Sandpoint High School. I think when I first met him, I was recruiting and went up there. And my goal was to get to every high school in Idaho on a 2-year cycle. And just to make sure that the head coach was in their building and from Boise State, and they knew that. So that was the first place I met him. And then he came on with Pete, and then I got to know him a little bit there. And he's obviously gone to Montana State, and he does a great job. Plays about 5 quarterbacks in a game. He plays a linebacker or at quarterback. He plays a linebacker, a receiver, 2 or 3 quarterbacks. But he does a good job. Of course, he's good on special teams, so you got to be ready there. They're going to run it on you. They're very structurally sound, and they're kind of blue collar up there in Bozeman. And he's done a nice job kind of getting those guys going. Now, again, that's a program that's very well funded. They're building a new facility. Ironically, we're building a new facility, a
Okay.
$60 million building here. So
Wow.
Jeff's done a good job, and quite frankly, he's kind of owned the other school up there in Missoula a little bit, and that's obviously big in that state. I mean, those two schools are probably the preeminent money programs in our conference. Andy, again, let's go back to Dirk. You know, Dirk and Brent Guy, and I was the recruiting coordinator at the time. We got Andy, and kind of an undersized dude from Corona,
Right.
but came up, and just a playmaking Jesse. Really super smart, really love football, tough guy, and team captain. And I don't know, he probably at least a 3-year starter there for us. Not the biggest, not the fastest, not the strongest, but nobody's going to out tough him, outthink him, outwant him, out playmaking. So he was that kind of guy to be around. And then when he came to us in Colorado, same thing, super smart guy. Players love him. He's just got an intuitive sense with the players. He kind of gets it. And so he was really fantastic, but a smart guy, detailed guy. I remember one time I was always on my GAs about getting their masters. I mean, you know me, I'm like, I want you getting that thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just here to do ball. You got to get your master's degree. Ironically, I'll tell you, the only guy that told me I'm not doing that is Justin Wilcox. But anyhow, Andy, I remember one time, looking at his grades, and he was about a 3.8 student or something. And Colorado's a good school now. And I'm like, gee whiz, Avalos, you're kind of getting after it here in school. And he goes, oh, yeah, and you wouldn't even really know it. He just subtly took care of business. So his rise in the coaching profession has not surprised me at all. He's a good recruiter. He's a good person. He's a good coach. He gets it. He knows what he wants. He was raised at Boise and loves Boise. And like I said, he's been around me. He's been around Pete. He's been around Dirk, all those guys. And ironically, look where he's at now, Oregon.
Right.
Now, Bellotti is not there, and Aliotti's not there. And how about that, Aliotti? This is not Joe Aliotti, the quarterback. This is Nick Aliotti, his brother. So it's kind of a great story, really. And it's funny how it's all interwoven. But, there's Andy at Oregon. But both good guys, both really good coaches, different in their approach for sure, but both very good people, very good coaches.
Always a pleasure, man. Get you back to the grind there for Davis. The Aggies getting ready to get after it. You're like T-minus, I don't know, Hawk, 6 weeks, right? Or less than that, right?
It's crazy, Jeff. We've been that way. We thought we were going to go in August, so we got going in there, and then we came back and had fall ball, and it's been an interesting journey. I think it's a time for leadership, a time to be flexible. We've got just so many things from the pandemic, dealing with the social injustice issues. I really think college athletics and college football in general is going to take a huge shift here when this all settles. So it's been interesting, and it's been dynamic, and it's been, I'm kind of I'm intellectually curious. I'm not saying I'm intellectual, but I'm curious. So we've just tried to stay flexible and keep our guys going and keep them purposeful, and the same with the staff. So yeah, we're supposed to start walkthroughs the 15th and practice the 29th, and open up against the Bobcats on February 27th. So I was checking the weather report the other day, so I'm sure Choate's got snowshoes on and thick parkas, because it is the dead of winter in Bozeman right now.
Good stuff. Thanks, Hawk.
All right, guys, appreciate it.